Hello, everybody out in VipKid land. It's Teacher Christy again. Today I'm going to talk about feedback. One of the things that I get asked a lot, and there's a lot of questions on the board, is how do you give bad feedback about children's behavior? When do you give it? Should you even give this feedback on behavior? This can be a really tricky question because we know that those parents will evaluate us. We're going to be getting Apple scores, and often we're afraid that if we give negative feedback about a child's behavior, that we'll get a bad Apple score, and then that feedback will be on our record forever, even if they invalidate the score. My personal experience with the VipKid is that they're very, very generous about invalidating scores that they don't believe are accurate. They do a really good job of evaluating closely those classes and seeing if the parent has a point and going ahead and taking care of that score. The problem that has been brought up, and I think continues to be a problem, is that the VipKid will not take away the written component. So even though that score is invalidated, you can still see that you received a dissatisfactory score, and you can still see what the comments were. So that's something that will follow you as a teacher. So when do you give feedback? Do I give negative feedback about behavior? Yes, I absolutely do. I absolutely do. But I want to give you guys some ideas and some tips about when, why, and how I give that feedback. I personally have never had a parent give me bad Apple feedback, and I've had a couple thousand Apple feedbacks on my record. I've never had a parent give me bad feedback because I gave their child constructive criticism, except for unit assessment. And those are different, and I'll talk about those in another video. Unit assessments can be tricky, and those are something that I'm always a little wary of giving constructive feedback. It's the place where we should most often give constructive feedback, but a place that I'm most concerned about it in terms of affecting me. So a couple things that I think about. The first thing that I think about, one, I never give bad feedback in trial classes. I just don't necessarily think it's appropriate. A lot of times they're just checking us out. They may not even want to join. I'm just not going to do it. It's not worth it. The second thing about giving constructive feedback on behavior, if I've had the child and it's the first time I've had that child, and I'll look at my schedule for the next 2 weeks. If I don't have that child again the next 2 weeks and I've never had them before, I'm not going to give them bad feedback. I'm just going to give them very generic feedback. I won't give them glowing reports like they did so great. I just give them very generic standard feedback. Here's what we did in class. Thanks for booking. In part because I want to discourage them from booking again, but also it's not worth the risk to me. Generally, kids will eventually find a regular teacher, and hopefully they will address this issue, but it's not necessarily worth the risk to me for a kid that I may never see again. So I always evaluate that. But if I'm teaching a kid who's having a behavior that's difficult to deal with, and I see that I have him 3 times next week, that's a behavior that I'm going to deal with. I'm going to try to find a resolution so that he can have a positive experience. So how do we go about doing that? Well, it's a little tricky, and I'll tell you, here's how I do it. I generally start off with my usual, it's wonderful to see Susie. Then I go, we talked about, what did we learn about in class today? I try to come up with something positive that they did. You know, he works hard to pay attention or be respectful. Try to come up with something. And if you think about it, there's always something positive that did happen, even if it's simple. And how I always phrase negative feedback is I say, I would really like to see Joey work on paying close attention to the teacher. I would really like to see Susie work on not drawing when it's not drawing time. I would really like to see Danny focus only on the class instead of being on other sites. So I phrase it as a place to work on. Just like I would say, I'd really like you to work on vowel sounds, or I'd really like you to work on verbs. And then I give specific things. I always try to give specific things that they can do to show me that they're working on that. So by not visiting other sites, by not drawing during drawing time. And if I can come up with a suggestion for the parents, I always do. I would recommend that Daisy not have other objects in front of her. I would recommend that, if I can think of steps that they can take. When I phrase it that way, it seems parents read it and they see it, but it's such a neutral way to phrase it, and it's something that they're going to hear regularly from us, maybe not about behavior, as I really like to see this happen. If it's something that's an ongoing problem, if I've had to say it more than once to a student in feedback, what I might do is ask the parent to be present. for the next class. And here's how I'll phrase that. I think it would really help Steven's learning if he had another adult present. This may help him focus. Our parents generally, I mean, they're paying a lot of money. They're very, very concerned about their kids' education. They very much want to help them. And the vast majority of parents that I have, if I give them a suggestion, will follow it. So I'll ask to have a parent there. This will often solve the problem. The parent will come once or twice, and the child's golden. In general, the first feedback works. It really does. I would say at least more than half of my students will come back and not have that same behavior, at least for a few weeks, and I might have to, do a reminder and feedback. But in general, they'll come back and not have that behavior. If a parent comes at step 2, that often resolves itself. They've had the conversation, and it will get better, at least going forward in the future. I've had a number of students that I've consistently given this feedback to that didn't get better. And if it becomes something that is really distracting for me as a teacher and I don't feel like that student's making progress in their education, I will fresh this ticket specifically to the Chinese lead teacher. I will tell them, now they have records of your notes. So the first thing they're going to do is look at your notes. So you want to make sure that you've mentioned this to the parents, because they don't want to call the parents if you haven't been telling the parents all along. So I've worked with Susie 4 times. Here's the behavior. Here's the feedback. Will you please connect with this parent? In the same feedback, I will write, I would recommend talking with a Chinese lead teacher about where you want to go. So I'll recommend or refer it to the Chinese lead teacher. 99% of the time, those 3 things will solve your problem. Now, I've had one student out of several thousand that the feedback, the parent, the Chinese lead teacher were not effective in. And I started recommending to the CLT and the parent that perhaps another teacher or a male teacher would be more beneficial for this student. Persistence. I continued to be persistent about it because it was a situation that as a teacher I just dreaded. And that's not good for him, and that's not good for me. But these steps really go a long way towards resolving behavior. I think a lot of our kids don't expect us to call their behavior out, because a lot of times we don't. We're really trying to preserve our own jobs. But it's really best for the students. It's best for us to do that. As a brand new teacher, I might not take the risk. But I think going forward, it's helpful for everybody. What I found is that this actually has improved my status among parents. It's improved the amount of regulars that I get. Usually if I give bad feedback, and I'm careful about this, usually if I give feedback like this, I get the kid back as regular. I think our parents, more than not, want us to hold our kids accountable, perceive you giving them constructive criticism as you being a serious and responsible teacher, perceived it as strictness, which is a good thing in Chinese culture. And even if I have some of these comments about being too strict, I think that actually works to my advantage as we go forward in terms of parent feedback. So I actually think that this has resulted in me having higher bookings, higher regular rates. But I use it very, very carefully. I don't like to put on my feedback on YouTube, but if on one of the Facebook sites, that are only VipKid teachers, you want to see examples of my negative feedbacks that I give to my kids, I have formats like everything else. I'll go ahead and give it to you. But I hope this was really helpful, and I wish you luck in this. My suggestion for you is that you try to deal with some of these issues, because this is a hard job. You spend a lot of time doing this, and you want to make it the best experience for both of you. Okay, bye for now. See you later. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like. Okay, bye.